Kia ora, good morning. Oh, yawn. Oh, sorry. Today's podcast. I want to talk about pareidolia and what it actually is, and explain why we experience pareidolia. And yeah, so anyway, pareidolia is basically when you see faces in patterns in inanimate objects, that sort of thing. And I know, there's plenty of instances out there where rocks will look like elephants, or you'll see faces in your curtains and that sort of thing. Um, but there's one instance of pareidolia that is perceived to be ghosts, that it's not, that it's actually something very awesome and supernatural, not paranormal at all. And that's when you see faces inside orbs. You know, when you'll take photos and there'll be like dust, or, where light is picking up on dust particles or atoms in the atmosphere, highly charged electromagnetic atoms like ion particles. Cameras are really good at picking up on that sort of stuff, and especially if you use a flasher, it has really good lighting. And you'll pick up faces, and a lot of people will pick up faces of loved ones that have passed over, which is often why people will believe it's ghosts, but it's not that at all. So let's go back. The reason why we experience pareidolia goes back to a primal instinct for when we were um, the lower species, when we weren't an alpha species, when we had to watch out for predators who would, hide in bushes and camouflage themselves. We had to um, get our instincts to the point where we could pick out faces in amongst inanimate objects, or trees and leaves and the desert and the water and all of that, in order to identify friend or foe. Obviously, because you're born with instincts, we're born with instincts, but we're not born with intuition. The more you use your instincts, the stronger your intuition becomes. So obviously, if you're out wandering in the forest or the jungle or the desert, or you're in the ocean, and you see something coming into view, your instincts will let your body know. So like your hair stands up on end and that sort of thing. And then you're expected to use discernment to decide, is that a friend or a foe? Do I need to freeze? Do I need to flee? Or do I need to fight for my life? Right? Because that's why we have our instincts for the 3S: fear, freeze, fight, or flee. And using discernment is using your intuition, right? So then you have to hone in your intuition in order to make that decision on whether to stand your ground, whether to run away, or whether you're going to freeze in fear and become prey, get eaten. So that's where your intuition comes in. Using discernment, using your judgment is where your intuition comes in. But before we have intuition, instinct is first, and instinct is primal. And the reason why that is like, you know how they say that there's only two fears that a baby is born with: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. The fear of falling comes from, when the doctors will like pretend to drop the baby in order to see if the baby like reaches out and gasps and cries and that sort of thing. That goes back to when we were primates living in the trees, and we'd fall asleep in the trees and fall out of the trees. So, when a baby has a fear of falling, when the doctor pretends after it's born to drop it, it's to test the instincts of the baby to see if it reaches out. Because if the baby doesn't reach out and grab its thin ear, or wave its arms about, or like gasp or cry or go like that, sorry, there could be like some sort of motor neuron condition, or, you know, something wrong with the brain. So it's always one of the first things the doctor will do. Um, so that comes from when we were primates. And you know, with a newborn baby, if you run your finger along their palm or the sole of their feet, they will automatically clench their fists or curl their feet up. That's from when we were mammals that used to cling to our mother's fur. That's a primal instinct that we still have from when we were mammals, where we used to cling on to our mother's fur, either to her belly or to her back. So when you run your finger along the baby's foot or the baby's hand, they'll automatically clasp and clench on. Or if you put your finger in a baby's hand, they automatically grasp the finger. That goes back to when we were mammals, where the babies clung onto the mother's fur. Um, the same thing as well when you know, with a newborn baby, with a baby that's crying, if you hold it in your hands and just wriggle its butt so that its butt and legs are like flailing about, the baby will stop crying. That's because it's that the baby stops crying because it takes it back to when it was sperm in the father's testicles, in the father's scrotum. And so it takes it back to a time of comfort and warmth and security of being inside the father's testicles. So don't let anyone believe that babies aren't attached to the father like they are the mother, because they're in the father first. Um, which is why, I mean, I'm not going to go into it, but father's rights are just as much as mother's rights when it comes to ownership of the baby and that sort of thing. Because, you know, I mean, okay, yeah, the mother grows the baby in the stomach and that, but without the father, the child wouldn't exist. To the child, for the first 10 days of birth, it is still very much attached to the father and where it came from. So a baby that doesn't, that cries all the time for the first 10 days of birth, in order to settle it down, you just hold it in the air with its tummy facing the ground, obviously securely, and you just wriggle its butt, leave its feet dangling and wriggle its butt so that its butt and legs are like flailing about, and the baby will stop crying because it's reminding them of when they were sperm, safe and secure inside dad. That's primal instinct. It's genetic memory. Pareidolia is genetic memory. Um, so when you see faces inside patterns, faces inside objects, it takes us back to our primal instinct of having to keep an eye out for potential threats and predators, the, you know, the friend or foe response. However, there's one example. The fear of loud noises as well also comes from the same thing. You know, when you're foraging in the forest for your nuts and berries and your insects and all of that, and all of a sudden something comes crashing out of the bush and it's a jaguar or a dinosaur or something, a predator. That the fear of loud noises comes from that, you know, because trees would come crashing down, branches would go flying, you know, like if you're talking about like an elephant or something like that, whatever was coming after you, um, what, you know, because like if you were encroaching on their territory, you know, like a hippo or a rhino or an elephant or like a dinosaur or something big, and you were in fear of being trampled because they were territorial, or you were in fear of being eaten or, you know, killed or whatever because you were a threat to their environment, obviously things would come crashing down. Trees would come crashing down, branches would go flying off trees. You know, there'd be like massive like bubbles of water coming splashing out of the water, and it's very loud. It's why you don't tap on the glass at aquariums, because that tapping sound is very, very loud to aquatic animals, because they're very sensitive to sound and frequency and vibration. So you never ever tap on a fish bowl or an aquarium glass, because it hurts their ears. It's painful to them. That's a primal instinct that we still have. So the fear of loud noises that you get, you know, when you get a fright, that is from a primal instinct for that, for when we were predators and, under threat of being trampled or beaten because we were encroaching on someone else's territory and they felt threatened, like gorillas and that sort of thing. If they feel threatened, they'll kill you. So if you were something not as powerful as a gorilla, it's going to kill you. And they come crashing out of those bushes. When a gorilla comes charging at you, you hear it, like the beating of the chest and all of that. So the fear of loud noises as a baby comes from all of that. So when we see faces and orbs, they're not dead. It's what I call visual memory. And because the ion particles in the atmosphere are very highly charged, and they can take snapshots in time, because time in the universe, the past, present, and future, is happening all at once. The past, you have already lived your future. In the future, your death has already been recorded and already happened. Your marriage, your children, everything, it's already been recorded. But how you get there is based on your actions, your choices, and your decisions. So you mold and shape your future by your choices, actions, and decisions in order to get to the end goal of living your life. But it has already happened, which is why it's supernatural and so cool. So atoms have the ability to record time and memory. If atoms can record time, it means they're recording memory. I think with like Hinduism and all that, it's called the Akashic Records. Most people will know it as the Akashic Records, but it's visual memory. When you take a photo and you see the face of something or someone that you love, or just a face in an orb, um, you're catching visual memory, where that atom, that particular particle, has taken a snapshot of something or someone in history, and you're seeing it happening at the time it took the photo. How I explain it is, okay, nebulas basically create the universe and they pump it out. And what happens is, every now and then, when the frequency is the right vibration, there's like, when you pull a rubber band, like, or you pull a piece of string, like it's loose, and then you pull it and it goes boing, and it goes really tight. That's what happens when time is recorded inside atoms. It's like everything in the universe, because the nebula will be pumping out these new stars and all this dust and all that from previous things that have existed in that. And every now and then, as it's sweeping change into the universe, the frequency will be such that it will tighten and pull and go doing like that. And it will take a photograph. And it does that so fast and so frequently, like it never doesn't do it. It's like a continual thing that it does, continually taking snapshots in time so fast that if you were to look at it from a visual perspective, it would look like sound waves. Or, when you turn your stereo up and it has those coloured lines that go up, and they'll all be different levels and different heights and different sounds and different colors, and that when you turn your stereo up, if it's got one of those amp bars, do you know what I mean? And then one might be on 9, one might be on 10, one might be on 3, one might be on 7, one might be on 6, all across the board. And they'll vary in frequency from, I think it's like usually yellow, then orange, and red, then green, I think, those coloured bars on the amp board thing. I don't know what it's called. Well, when atoms take a snapshot, it's like everything is 10 across the board. Everything, when it reaches a certain frequency, everything goes 10 across the board. And that's the string tightening and time taking a photo of memory. It's remembering everything that it's putting out. It's remembering everything it's recording and putting out into the atmosphere. And so these orbs They're not dead people. They might be dead now. They might be dead at the time you take the photo. You might not even know who they are. You might know who they are, but they're not dead people. They're not ghosts. They're not coming back to say to you, like, oh, I'm here and oh, sort of thing. You're literally witnessing atoms recording their existence in time, and you just happen to be seeing it at the time that their existence is sweeping through your atmosphere, because time happens all at once. So that's what's so cool about it. They might be dead now, and if that happens, it's just there so that you can remember them, because that's what you have to remember, is that our loved ones who have crossed over will always find the simplest, easiest way to connect with you, because of the fact that manifestations of the dead in real life, i.e., ghosts, are exceptionally rare. And when they do have to do that, like I've said before, it's always with a purpose. It could be for a warning, it could be because they need help, it could be because, they're having to get a message across, but it will be very quick, it will be very succinct, it will be very to the point, and you will never forget it. So because the misconception is when people see time, they automatically think, that it's a ghost. But think of ghosts as like ghost memory. You're seeing the ghosts of time. You're seeing the ghost of something that already existed happening now. But it doesn't mean that they're a dead person wandering the earth because they're lost. It means that you are witnessing a time event. You're witnessing a supernatural event where time is bending, where you are seeing something or someone acting out their life now in their time. And you're just watching a recording of it. Stone tape theory. So hauntings are where they will have knowledge of you, which I've already explained before. But there are also hauntings where it's like it's repetitious. So like, I lived in a house in Liverpool where it was like every other Friday night, every single other Friday night, I'd get up to go to the bathroom and I could always smell whiskey. And I would smell burning wood, and I'd hear water dripping through the ceiling, and I would hear a TV on downstairs, and I would hear people and like kids and a woman singing, like not well, like nursery rhymes, but it sounded like it was in Celtic or something like that. Like they were singing Irish folk songs or nursery rhymes and stuff like that every other Friday night. Haunting. And then I did some investigation and I found out that there was a house fire there, that the man of the house, because it was an old house, the man of the house used to work down at the docks, and he would walk back from the docks, fleeing drunk. And obviously the wife and kids in that used to sing Celtic nursery rhymes, that he was Irish. The father of the house was Irish. So our washing house used to be the old toilet and stuff, because they were, sort of Victorian houses and that, but it was so cool. That would be a haunting. They didn't know we were there. We knew, my ex and I knew they were there, and we were fine with it because they were harmless. But every now and then, if someone came to the house who was either a threat to me or, not of a moral or ethical standard, they would let us know. Doors would slam. Um, the lights would start moving, to the point where they would chase these people out of the house. It was always a sign for me to know whether I could trust that person or not, depending on how these people reacted to who was coming into my home. So hauntings can also be where you can physically interact with them. I left them alone. I kept to myself. We kept to ourselves. We just let them do their thing. But they understood that we weren't a threat. They understood that I was someone that they could trust and respect, if you know what I mean. So when I would have interactions where, like, if I was going downstairs and we'd pass each other on the stairway, because I know that they had, like, not a maid, but, well, yeah, like a maid. I know they had someone there that used to come in and help them, and I used to pass her on the stairs, and I used to pass her going into the kitchen dining room area. She'd often have, like, laundry or basket of food in her hands and stuff, and we'd pass each other, and she'd look at me and give me a sweet little smile, and I'd just go about my business with her. I'd just completely ignore her. Although we'd lock eyes, she'd go about her business, I'd go about mine, we'd meet in the middle. I'd sort of give her a little glint of acknowledgement with my eye. She'd give me a wee smirk, and we'd go off and do our thing without any interaction, because if you try to interact with it, it brings your subconscious mind into action, and then you start bringing in logic and reason, and it brings you out of that connection. And when you're snapped out of that connection, like that string I was talking about that snaps you out, it can be quite emotionally and psychologically traumatic. It can leave you quite out of breath, heart pounding really fast, a feeling of shock, even like sadness, confusion, that sort of thing. So you can't ever try to interact with it, because otherwise you miss out on an incredible experience. So my ex and I, we were used to it. So a haunting can be where you coexist, where they don't even know you're there. A ghost will definitely not know you're there. They're just doing their thing, and they're like a recording in time, stone tape theory, playing back, right? Playing back the recording. Whereas hauntings, you go about your business, you coincide together, but with a time slip, you acknowledge each other. You know that the other one is there. Most people will then, like, run away. Obviously, the three F's: fear, fight, or flee. Freeze, fight, or flee. Most people flee, or will charge towards it aggressively, or they'll freeze in fear. That's why I keep saying fear instead of freeze, because you freeze in fear. Like rabbits and deer do, like a deer caught in headlights, and that they freeze in fear. That's a primal response. They panic. They don't know what to do. So yeah, so hauntings can also be like time slips where you acknowledge each other, you know the other one is there. With pareidolia, with the orbs, the snapshot in time, where you're seeing their face and, oh my God, that's my auntie. Or I've seen loads of cases where, they've shown the face, and then they've shown a photo, like a black and white photo or an old yellow photo of someone from the past who's like well long dead, and it's identical. That's a snapshot. That's a snapshot of memory caught in time. So it's literally when the time that photo was taken, because you know how people will show the orb and then they'll show the photo. You're seeing the orb taking the photo at the time the physical photo was being taken. And it's just time playing out, and you're witnessing it. So it's not a ghost, it's not a dead person, it's not anyone that's risen from the dead. It is literally the atoms recording time in your atmosphere, and you're witnessing it at the time the photo was taken or the time the event happened. But if you've got video or photo evidence of it, and then you're seeing it in an orb, that orb is the moment that snapshot in time was taken. How cool is that? That's so much better than the thought of the dead wandering the earth, don't you think? That's the beauty of my physics. Quantum magnetics, that's the beauty of my physics. It explains the paranormal in a way that makes it so much better than what people think it is. It's also, then you don't need to fear it, you don't need to be afraid of it, because you know exactly what it is. And the best part about it is, by teaching it to children, when they're going through their puberty and their supernatural, heightened stage, through puberty, as the chemicals in their brains are changing and they're literal X-Men. By them understanding all of this, it's going to lessen any and all paranormal activity in and around their atmosphere. So paranormal activity, scary things, things that go bump in the night will stop happening because they're going to understand exactly what it is. And that's why God always pushes me, regardless of those who try to stop me or steal from me or whatever. God keeps pushing me because what I'm teaching children is so important, because not only is it going to alleviate their fears and help them understand better who they are and what they are and how powerful and gifted they are and special they are, it's also opening minds to a new way of understanding physics. It's also opening minds to a new way of understanding God and evolution and creation. And then, because learning is knowledge, knowledge is wisdom, wisdom is power. And when you have power over your own evolution, over your own journey, over your own developmental and spiritual process, you're no longer afraid. Things are no longer confusing. You find the answers to everything in my physics. Therefore, you cure yourself of perceived mental illness. You get yourself off the medications. You're able to heal yourself from addictions. You if you have fetishes and all of that, because I'm able to teach you to understand why, because of my physics, because of how I understand how the universe and God works, because God is just atom. To my ancient Egyptian ancestors, we called God Atom, Atom, because we understood how atoms worked. And God just means to create, and atoms create everything in the universe. Even without the concept of a dude in a white bed that sits on a cloud with a pointy finger that like shoots bolts of lightning out on people to teach them a lesson, even without that concept of even thinking, if you're an atheist and all of that, you can't deny the science. Everybody, regardless of their religious beliefs, knows what an atom is and knows what they are and that they create, right? That's all God is. But atoms are conscious, and faces inside Pareidolia is proof that atoms are conscious and that they remember and record time and, interact with us every day without us even knowing about it. Like, when you hear a song playing and it reminds you of somebody that you loved and lost, that's because they're thinking about you, whether it's because they're dreaming about you. Because remember, when we dream, we're in the existence of time. We're in the consciousness of time. When we dream, we have access to all time, to all the records when we dream. So whether the loved one is dead and been reborn into a whole new life, lived 3 different lives since they died, or whether they're someone you're just separated from, or someone that you're no longer in contact with, or just someone that you love and they're thinking of you but you're not together, like in the same house or whatever, if you hear that song and it reminds you of them, that's because they're thinking of you when they're asleep, or because they're thinking about you hard enough that you're picking up on them. That's because time records sound, time records thought, time records feelings, time records emotion, and it takes snapshots of it and will send it out to you in waves of frequency and waves of energy. And it might manifest itself in the form of a song, so that when you hear it, you automatically think of them, and that's you two connecting in that moment. So if they are dead, if they are crossed over and they've been born into a whole new life, because they will, because everybody reincarnates, because atoms reincarnate, atoms are always changing form constantly, constantly, constantly. So if they have crossed over and you hear a song or you smell a smell and it triggers a memory of them, that's because they're thinking of you. They're reaching out to you in their sleep. And it's you reconnecting with them in that moment, proving that even though you aren't physically together, emotionally, you are still very much attached in the highest frequencies. And remember, I said before, music, love, laughter, and faith are the four highest frequencies in the universe. They create everything. They are the greatest powers in the universe. So if you love someone and they've crossed over and then something triggers a memory, that's because they're asleep or they're daydreaming or they're in the creative flow. You know how artists and writers and that we get in that flow, that in that flow state, and we don't want anything pulling us out of it. Because that band will snap, like I said, it pulls you out of it. You know, if you're writing and you're in that flow, or you're painting and suddenly the phone rings, or you're daydreaming and suddenly the phone rings, or someone comes up behind you and you get that jump and you're like, oh God, I didn't see you there, or oh my God, that gave me a fright. You know, you'll jump. That is that primal instinct of the fear of loud noises, but it is also because it's pulling you out of the same frequency that I was explaining before with the maid. So when you get pulled out of something, when you're in that in the creation frequency, when you're in that flow of energy where everything is perfectly aligned and you're fully consciously aware, when something suddenly happens to pull you out of it, which as a writer myself, it can, I can get really pissed off. Like I'm like, it can, you know, and you'll snap at people because the band snaps, you know, it goes tight. You'll snap at people. God, you know, no, and you'll lose your train of thought, or you'll lose that flow state. That's all the same thing. It's primal because it's bringing you out of the natural state of being in your highest conscious state. When you're in the flow of atoms and that connection gets broken, it snaps, and you can snap and you can be snappy and lose your temper. And you know, artists, I know my ex-husband, he's an artist, and when he used to get interrupted, he'd smash his canvases. And yeah, he's like smashed phones. Like if I've had to come in to ask him to do something while he's been painting and it's been urgent and that, like he's like, you know, like smashed his canvases, like put his paintbrushes and that through the canvases, throwing things across the floor, blah blah blah. It can be quite scary with him because he was violent anyway, but never physically to, he only ever punched me once. But the police know about that, and I'm not going to go into it here because it's not necessary for this thing. But yeah, so now you know, and it's so much, it's more logical, even though it's a far out there explanation. It is far more logical than the concept of a dead person rising from the grave and then morphing themselves into a bunch of atomic energy to infuse itself into the ion particles of your atmosphere, waiting for the right time for you to walk in, take the photo, do whatever in order to interact with you. My explanation is way more logical, and now I get to build an empire, the entertainment factory, and the foundation where we get to make games and movies and TV shows and all that sort of thing, like the Art of Creation animated TV series, which is going to be like our version of sort of Family Guy, South Park sort of thing. It's going to explain all of this in the cartoon, in the animated series. It's, you know, for grown-ups, but a lot of kids have access to South Park and Family Guy, but it's going to teach a lot. What I can't teach the kids at the school and through our video games and that, I'm relying on the parents and guardians and friends and family members to then teach it to their children as well. And if I can, I want my science taught in schools across the world as part of science class, or to teach like a esoteric class where every child learns about all of this, regardless of whether they're Muslim, Mormon, Christian, Catholic, whatever, atheists, non-believers. What my science teaches is across the board of all faiths and levels of understanding and concepts of what it is when we die, because it's science. And I have the backing of Allah and God, and I have the proof of all of that. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, and everyone says my pudding tastes damn good because it heals the soul. Cures the mind and heals the soul. So, yeah. So there you go. The thumbnail of this video is a prime example. I'm going to put another one up in the community box. But just look up Pareidolia or Faces in Orbs, and it's all there. And now you know. Pretty cool, really, eh?